Hello and welcome to Love and All That, a 5-episode podcast where we explore different themes and true stories about love and relationships. I'm your host, Patricia Petit Liang, and the song you just heard was I Didn't Want to Hear You Say I'm Leaving from the Meighu album, also called Love and All That. Today, we're joined by musician Michael from Meighu, clinical psychologist Ava-Ann Allman, and special guest therapist Tobey Mandel to discuss this song and to try to answer the question, do we ever really know the person we love? But first, here's Michael talking about the true story behind I Didn't Want to Hear You Say I'm Leaving.
So that song was inspired by a true story about being abandoned by the person you love. And it's a story about this guy this character in New York who's very much in love with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend was the center of his universe. And he proposed to her, and as an engagement present, she had this dream of wanting to have a session with a fortune teller in New York. So he's also giddy of happiness, and he goes and he buys her this hour-long session with this fortune teller. And he takes her to the fortune teller, and he's waiting outside. And the fortune teller, within that hour, says something very profound to his girlfriend. And she says, sometimes in life, love is just not enough. And with that, something flipped in her, and she just walked out of the relationship, walked out of everything, and just left him. And the song is written in the moment he is trying to deal with all of this. So he's walking in a park, it's raining, and he's basically asking, what just happened? And he's posing a million questions to the universe, and the universe just doesn't have any answers for him. So the emotion of the song is very much kind of has that melancholic feeling, cloudy type of feel to it. And then we have this wider question that everybody asks at some point, which is, do we ever really know the person we love? And I think that's a very interesting question that's also inspired by that story.
That's a great question, Mike, and hopefully we'll be able to explore the themes behind it today. To help us out, Michael and I consulted with our resident clinical psychologist, Ava-Ann Allman, and our special guest therapist, Tobey Mandel. Here are Ava's first thoughts on our question.
What if I came to you and I said, as a patient, is it possible to really know the person you love? What would you tell me as a starting?
I would do that really annoying therapist thing. Or answer your question with a question.
Oh no.
Is why is this important to you? Why are you asking about this? So I would really want to explore that with them. Because usually when we come in with a question, we're coming in with an anxiety, right? Or a worry. And so I'd want to kind of get to the base of what is it that you're worried about or nervous about? Or what question are you really asking? In terms of, is it a healthy question to ask? I think that all questions are good. Ask it. Why not? If you don't ask it, it'll never be out there, and then you won't have a chance to explore it. So again, going back to this idea of we have all these things that we take for granted. I'm fat, I'm dumb, no one will love me, right? We have all these things and we keep them in our heads and we walk around like, yep, this is actually true. And then when you say things out loud, then you realize, wait a second, is that actually true? And it gives you a chance to really evaluate it. So ask the question, do we ever really know? I think asking that is healthy, but then really breaking it down and thinking about it.
That's awesome. So maybe we need to unpack this question. Relationships can be full of uncertainty, and infatuation can sometimes make us overlook certain qualities in our partners. Here's Tobey to tell us all about it.
Really know the person yet, so you're not fully giving yourself. You get to know them a bit more, maybe you give a bit more. I would agree that at a certain point you obviously get to know someone a bit better and you can come to a place where you feel more confident trusting them, but it would never be that you're really, really in a safe space, because there's a perception there. Your perception is that you can trust them, they've given you examples where you can trust them, but it's just a perception that it's what you see, but there's always so much more behind what we see. And infatuation is this idea that at the beginning of a relationship, all that we see are the amazing good qualities, and we think this is that person. And then over time, we learn that they're human and they're the same as we are, and they have flaws and they have things that annoy us and they have things that are difficult. And I think it's less about sort of feeling sure and more about feeling comfortable with the fact that, it's okay that they're flawed, and it's okay that there's some parts of it that we'll never know, or that we'll find out at certain points they might not even know yet. It's not that the needs to be certain, it's just more that we can be comfortable with the uncertainty.
If I could draw an analogy, every day we do things like we get in our cars in the morning, right? And we drive to work or we drive to school. And we don't know for certain that the other drivers on the road know what they're doing. We don't know for certain that, we won't crash and something won't happen, but we take a reasonable risk. And I think that in relationships, they're very much about that reasonable risk, right? So you don't throw yourself in with everybody, obviously, because that wouldn't be logical, but you meet someone and then you think, yeah, maybe this person. And then little by little, they expose themselves more, you expose yourself more. And then you think, yeah, okay, for this person, I'm willing to take this risk. And you will never have proof of something absolute because that just doesn't exist. I feel like there's something really relaxing about this is good enough. I can accept where this is right now and this will be okay. Because that's, it's a comfortable kind of, just, you're not stretching so hard. I don't know how to say that. You're just more at ease with it.
So you're saying that if I were to say I need to know the person I'm with, that in itself is not what I'm really looking for. I'm really looking for other things like trust and comfort.
It depends on the person, right? Don't get me wrong, there are definitely people who I see that really want certainty, and then we work on kind of tolerating uncertainty. But I think for a lot of people, when they say no, they do mean trust, believe, accept, right? And those are different things. And these are things that you can work on separately, because when do you know that you know everything, right? There's no ultimate knowledge that we can put a mark on. So I think you're absolutely right that for a lot of people, it's really just like, will I ever know the person that I love? Okay, can I truly trust the person that I love? Am I willing to take that risk?
Let's say if I come to you as a patient, right? And I say, every relationship I get into, it just doesn't end well because I feel as though I know the person. And then one day wake up and things just change like that. Then I realize I didn't know this person. What would you tell me if I came to you with that kind of dilemma?
The first thing that I usually say to people is that relationships end until they don't. When we end up with the person that we're with, we don't break up with them. But along the way, you're going to break up with everybody else. We always feel like, why do I keep breaking up with people? Why am I screwing up? But breaking up is just a normal part of the process. So is it necessarily pathological? I don't know. The other thing is that we can make mistakes, right? And this is very corny, but I think mistakes are learning opportunities. So what is it that made you think that you knew person X? And when you were proven wrong, in quotes, because I'm not sure how much we'd have to explore that a bit more. But when you felt that you were wrong, what was it that made you think you might have been wrong? And did you do that same mistake with person Y and person Z? And how can we take those as learning opportunities to figure out where to go next? I think we spend a lot of time beating ourselves up, like, why can't I get anything to work? But sometimes we just got to break a lot of stuff before we find the thing that works, and that's okay. Maybe, for sure, you're probably doing something that's not ideal. We all do. So we can work on that and tweak it, but it's normal. It's normal to break up until you find your partner.
And during our discussion, we realized that it's not just about feeling uncertain about the other person. Sometimes we're uncertain about ourselves.
And I would take that even like a step further and say that it's not just about not knowing that the other person is happy or not happy. It's how much can we really predict our own reactions and feelings about certain things today that are going to happen in a year from now or 10 years from now.
Yeah, there's really good research on that, right? We are not good at predicting our future emotions. As human beings, affective forecasting, and we are quite bad at knowing how something will make us feel in the future. And even honestly, when we list the things that we want in a partner, the partners we end up with often don't match those characteristics that we put on the list. So yeah, it's true, Patricia. How well do we know ourselves?
But I think what I'm hearing you saying is the fact that you don't know somebody also makes them interesting.
Very much so. Ava and I were actually just speaking about an author called Esther Perel, who's written this book called Mating in Captivity. And it's essentially about how sometimes people in happy couples or like functional, well couples still leave the relationship or cheat. And her whole theory and her whole thesis sort of around this is the idea that knowing someone or thinking you know your partner so well is kind of dull. And if we're at a place in our relationship for many years and you know exactly what they're having for breakfast, you know exactly what they're going to be doing 9, 10, 11 a.m., it sort of takes away from that interest, curiosity, connection. And what she sort of argues is that that's that view that we know our partners so well is sort of taking away from the connection, but we actually don't know our partners that well. So if we can get in touch with the fact that there's still parts of them that we don't know, that can be an even closer sort of binding thing for couples.
And of course, if love wasn't enough in the story that helped inspire Michael's song, then what other factors could help contribute to a healthy relationship? Perhaps our daily choices could help bring us closer to happily ever after.
I think probably one of the biggest factors is choice. I think that people have to choose their relationships and choose their relationships consciously every single day. We have this idea of like Hollywood romances, right? It's going to be wonderful.
I like my
flowers.
rom-coms.
I love a good rom-com. Do not get me wrong.
I get my direction and my everything, my cues, everything from rom-coms. Don't break this again. You're breaking
but life
everything
would be great
for
if
me.
it was like that, right? There is a person
Life
out
is
there.
like
You
that.
just have to find them and then you're good to go. But
You complete me.
yeah, where is my other half? But part of it is waking up and being like, wow, this person is super unattractive in the morning. Or damn it, why does he snore so loudly? But you're still choosing all the time to stay in that relationship, right? Well, people say, it's not that romantic. But I feel like it's so romantic to say, yeah, I could not be here, but I am going to be here because I want to be here. And I think that's just the most beautiful thing that you can say to another human being.
Oh, I completely agree. And I think the idea of it being choice is so empowering, kind of as Mike, you were describing, don't break my fantasy, like don't break my heart, like this is.
Well, I like my rom-coms,
and you're, entitled to the rom-coms, but at the same time, it sort of means that like you kind of cross your fingers and close your eyes and you hope that a relationship works out. And if it doesn't, and I don't have control over it, it's all going to fall apart. And instead of kind of taking the responsibility back on yourself and thinking, what can I do? How can I choose to commit to this person in spite of the fact that I'm disappointed at times in the relationship, or there's arguing, whatever it is, because there will be all of it. And I know, as you say, you guys love the rom-coms. A film that I found, it's 3 films that were shot 9 years apart and 18 years total. And you see a couple, the same couple, first meet, the infatuation stage is there, they're crazy about each other, and they agree to come back a year later and meet in that same location. And then literally in real time, 9 years later, they refilm, and the couple has sort of reconnected through a different means, and they're sort of re-enjoying themselves, and the infatuation's still there. But then fast forward to the final film in real time 9 years later, and they have a kid, and there's arguments, and there's some bitterness, and they allude to some infidelity at some point, and it's sort of this real kind of slap in the face about like, okay, well, in the first 2 films, you see them like falling in love, and you look so forward. You just see that the end of the rom-com, the end piece where it's like, and they live happily ever after. But then you get a real life dose of what happily ever after looks like for many couples, and yet they are choosing to still be together. And so you see, it maybe tarnishes our view, in quotes, of sort of what we think of as romantic love. But I think it's some of the more sort of deep and real human love.
There are all kinds of things that can lead to high expectations and disappointment, making it hard to keep on choosing to stay in a relationship. Here's Ava's take on it.
One of the big things that we work on in therapy is labeling. We do it automatically, we do it unconsciously, and then it directs our behavior and the way that we view people. So it's okay that the labeling happens. The idea is you recognize that the labeling is happening and then really work on it afterwards.
Do you think that's a fight that people have? They're bombarded with these ideas, schemas that they need to be aware of, that they're labeling.
Yeah, we call it a cognitive distortion. It absolutely is. That's the world, right? These ways of thinking, these thinking traps that we all fall into. But I think it's really... I think it's normal. It's okay. The problem isn't that we're doing it, right? The problem is that we do it and we take it as the truth. So we need to challenge it. So doing it is okay. I always say, your feelings are okay. Your reactions are okay. All this is okay. But just to let it go, like it's the real thing. It's the reality of the world. That's where the issue is.
Do you think there's part of that question, do you ever really know the person you love? Part of it is the person asking the question is seeing what they want to see in that person until one day that person expires or that perception expires and reality sinks in.
Absolutely. This idea of, our schemas and the way, the stories that we tell ourselves essentially based on our confirmation biases and various other subjective perceptions. As you're saying it, it highlights how all of it comes from us It comes from the person who's experiencing whatever's in front of them, which means that we can take sort of full responsibility for that. And it's not about the fact that it's bad, but as Ava was saying, it's just about the fact that we need to be aware that we're doing it. And it's from us. It doesn't matter who's in front of us. It doesn't matter who our partner is. All that filtering that we're doing, it's from our own lens. So it's less about getting your partner to fit this mold. It doesn't have anything to do with them. It's the fact that you've created a mold for them to fit into. You can then work to break that mold or, soften it or remold or whatever. It gives me this impression that we can do anything with our relationships if we are sort of aware of ourselves.
Movies and television can make it seem like if one thing goes wrong in our relationship, then everything else is ruined. And when it comes to love, it can feel like it's all or nothing. We need to learn to accept both our partner's good and bad qualities, and make them feel good too.
So, if we move from, okay, so it's maybe not always butterflies, maybe it is, I would argue, the small things and the fact that your partner remembers that, when they make pancakes, you're not so into having chocolate chips in them or whatever the things are. I think it's also so much about you getting to give to somebody else. It's not just the idea of they do this or they do that. It's sort of, here's an opportunity for me to be kind and compassionate and loving towards somebody. What can I do today that I think would make my partner smile? Even if you're not feeling super connected, even if they haven't made the bed that morning, even if it would be more useful to do that even on the days where they have upset you. It's like, okay, fine. Is there anything I can do to sort of reconnect with my partner and make them feel loved and appreciated? So I feel like we get to do as much as we expect to receive as well. So you can be the loving, giving, romantic.
Is it true that studies have shown as well that by showing appreciation and thanking people, that leaves a better feeling inside of you rather than...
Yeah.
Because it's shifting your focus to the things that are going well or that are wonderful about the people around you instead of A, not really acknowledging it, or B, just zoning in on the things that they aren't doing well enough or whatever.
It sounded as though you were suggesting that this idea of, or this Western idea fed into us from rom-coms and all these things, of this idea of the pinnacle of a relationship is this belief that this person completes you and they could finish your sentences and stuff like this and they know everything about you. And there's some wisdom in that, this idea of that's a signal of a deep relationship. That's almost the opposite approach for an arranged marriage, where they don't have those constructs of measuring how good the relationship is. Because there's something really interesting on the arranged marriage side, because you just don't know this person.
If you compare successful relationships across both, arranged marriages tend to be stronger on certain measures and they tend to last a bit longer. And I think it goes back to this idea of choice that we spoke about before. They're choosing to be together. They're not together because of an idea of love and whatever they think love is supposed to be. They're together because it's important for their family, it's important for them, etc. And so they've made the choice, and they make the choice all the time. This is not to say I feel everyone should be in arranged marriages. I think obviously love relationships work out as well. Arranged marriages don't work out. But I think that it, especially living in North America, it gives us a really interesting thing to reflect on, right? Maybe it's not about my heart going pitter-patter every time I see him coming, or maybe it's not about butterflies in my stomach. Those things are good. Don't get me wrong. Those are great. But maybe it's also about, oh, wow, he will pick up the kids from daycare and he'll buy soup when I'm not feeling well.
And I think that perspective, if you can get there, it sort of allows you to let go of so much. And if you can let go of those extra sort of expectations and sort of this perfectionism mentality that we can never fulfill, it allows you to be in touch with a much more profound, sort of meaningful part of yourself that allows you to connect with the things and the other parts, your partner on a deeper level. It's not, man, the partner I'm looking for checks off all these boxes and all these things, and then only then will I be happy. It's recognizing that you can be happy regardless, and being in touch with that truly allows you to appreciate your partner for who they are.
Could having too many choices mess up with our appreciation of good enough? People would expect that by having all these choices, they would feel so much more happier and liberated. But in some cases, people feel more comfortable having maybe 2 or 3 choices as opposed to 50 choices, so many Tinder profiles to look at.
I love that phrase. I don't remember who coined it, but paralysis of choice. Yeah. I think it just nails everything that's happening today in society. So many options. You think of online dating and you meet someone, they're good, but maybe there's someone a little bit better. there. And then you're always trying to get to this ultimate, but we don't even know, right? We don't know what the ultimate is. We just feel like it's got to be out there and I'm working toward it. And we end up just kind of paralyzed. Yeah, like, I don't know, it's too much. What do I do? And then along with that, we try to seek the certainty. But this is not something that we can get to just in the world, you know? It's not something that exists.
And as we later realized, sometimes with all of these choices, it's better to go with what's good enough.
I do love that phrase, good enough. And oftentimes, I didn't always love it. I was a person who was very much like, do it well, do it perfectly, do it the right way. That one is a killer. But sometimes it's like, you know what? This is good enough. Yeah. And that is okay. And it's not settling. It's not being less than your best. It's not any of those things. It's really making a choice that right now I have done the best with what I have. And that's okay, right? Like all I have is me. All I have is my capacity. All I have is my ability. And I will work with that as best I can. And it's good enough. I am good enough.
And even if things go badly in a relationship, it's not always the end of the world.
That's it. And he's okay. You know what I mean? Like sometimes things happen and we think, well, that's it. I cannot recover from this. Yeah. This is the end. And somehow it works out okay. So I think we really have to remember that. And again, this goes back to this idea of effective forecasting. You know, Glenn might have thought at some point, if I break up with this woman, I'll never find love again.
That's the guy from Michael's story.
And now he's married with a kid, if I remember the end of the series correctly. Or at least married. He's with someone else. And when I look at that, I just think to myself, how amazing is life? You know, like it's pretty rough sometimes, like so rough. And then other times it's just this really astonishing possibility to do things.
Wasn't that a great discussion, audience? We're not sure if we can ever truly know the person we love, but we did learn that our daily choices empower us to be with the person we love, and that we have to trust people in the face of uncertainty and accept things that are good enough. We'd like to thank Glenn Washington from Snap Judgment for sharing his story with us. You can hear all about it on episode 704 of Snap Judgment, the perfect match at snapjudgment.org. I Didn't Want to Hear You Say I'm Leaving by Meighu is all about Glenn walking through the park after his initial breakup. And as we wrap up our show, here it is for your listening pleasure.
I wake up. It's a brand new day. A new day to start our lives. You say the birds are singing, but I don't hear them. Let's take one day at a time. You say, but my world
Meighu is a collaboration by musicians Matt Warnock, Jeff Lausch, and bandleader, composer, vocalist, and co-producer Michael Meighu. I Didn't Want to Hear You Say I'm Leaving was composed by Mike Meighu, Jeff Lausch, and Matt Warnock. The track was produced by Frank Kint and co-produced by Mike Meighu. Ava-Ann Allman helped write this episode and is our expert correspondent on all things relating to psychology and love. We'd like to thank therapist Tobey Mandel for joining us on the show today. Patricia Petit Liang is Love and All That's host, writer, and producer. This episode's audio was engineered by Andrew Wheeler. We'd also like to give special thanks to our publicist, Danny Payne. This episode was recorded in CJLO 1690 AM's recording studio at Concordia University in Montreal. You can join the conversation with us by logging on to MeighuMusic.com and checking out our I Didn't Want to Hear You Say I'm Leaving mood board. If you scroll all the way down, you can let us know your answer to the question, do we ever really know the person we love?